interview with Jocelyn McCurtain. Take 0. Hello and welcome to The Voice. My name is Joseph Salama. I'm an editor here, and I'm sitting here with Jocelyn McCurtain, vice presidential candidate. I know, right? Bad for Huskies United. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes off your Saturday to come.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just launch right into this.
Sounds good.
How has your experience working with CORE, the Committee Organizing Rape Education, and advocating on campus prepared you for your role as vice president?
Yeah, so the vice presidential position this year is obviously, or the new changes for next year, is going to be working with the different directors. And I believe just my experience holding not only the assistant director position, but also the directorship position gives me a unique perspective on how to work with directors, because I've worked with liaisons for the past 3 years from the board, both with Committee Organizing Rape Education and with my current position as UW leaders. With CORE, I was also responsible for going out into the different communities, so I understand that the ASUW needs to be a presence on campus, and that's something that I did through CORE. And then I was also responsible for our finances and making sure that we allocated money not just to the different workshops that we had each week, but also to the bigger programs. And one of the things that I did with CORE was I made bigger programs that brought more students in while staying within our financial budget. And I'm happy to say that 2 of the programs that I created last year are continuing on this year, and they're even bigger than they were. And I'm hoping that that can continue and raise awareness of not only CORE, but also of the greater ASUW. And I think that that's something that will be valuable with the vice presidential position next year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this one's a little bit more specific to yourself and to the ticket at large. You've been discussing a run for vice president since last spring, or so sources tell us. When the ASUW restructure occurred, did you consider running for a different position? And why are you still best suited for this position? You obviously stuck with it, now that it's significantly different than what it was prior.
Yeah. I never had any hesitation with running for vice president, even with the changes. And I think although some people say that it's considerably different, what the past one was working with getting volunteers and getting people interested within the ASUW and working with the ASUW. And the vice presidential position this year is similar in that you're going to be working with all the directors to make sure that they're reaching out to the ASUW with an added financial aspect on it. And in being responsible with the finances with each of the directorship positions and each of the programs, you're also making sure that they're still reaching out to the students that we need here on campus and that we need for the student government. So even though there were changes, I still looked at it as, well, it's taking an aspect that was the vice presidential position last year and has been in the past, and making it bigger and better, and something that I believe that I'm still very suited for, and working with the directors and the financial aspects of it. So I never had any hesitation when it did change, and I actually, in speaking with Jocelyn McCurtain and Eric Schellen, supported the changes that they made and understand the necessity of what the new vice presidential position is.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification on that point. Next one is, and you briefly touched on it with your experience with CORE, but do you have any experience to inform you in the handling of finances for ASUW?
Yeah, so one of my biggest experiences with finances is working as a student trustee at the University Bookstore. And the University Bookstore was created by the ASUW 111 years ago. So ever since that time, students have had a general interest, obviously, within the bookstore and the success of the bookstore. And the bookstore itself is a $50 million organization. And as a student trustee, my main job is to make sure that the different branches of the bookstore are reaching out to the students that it's supposed to be serving. So we do have the 8 different branches, but the main ones that are affecting us here are obviously the University District 1, the new one in Odegaard, because we moved from the hub, and now it's in Odegaard, and then the Health Sciences building, which a lot of students are not aware that there's a branch there. And as the student trustees, there's 4 of us currently, and then a grad student, so 5 sitting on there. We're looking over all the finances and how much money we're putting in, and really what we're getting back for not only the bookstore, but also the student population. And we also get to oversee the the student rebate, and last year we gave back $1.4 million to the students. And one of my main jobs is figuring out more ways to get students involved with the rebate. And we also give out lots of scholarships. So in the time that the bookstore has been here, we've given out $800,000 in scholarships back to the students. And I believe that this will help me with the new ASUW board and the finances of the ASUW, because as vice president, my main goal is going to be reaching out to the students and making sure that our finances are used appropriately. So not only is it bettering the ASUW, but it's also reaching out to the students, and that's the main goal of the ASUW.
Yeah, absolutely. Our fourth question here is a little bit broad, and it speaks to a specific job description line in the bylaws. What goals do you have for the association as a whole?
Yeah. So I have a couple goals, well, several, but a couple that I'll speak to. One of my main goals is to make sure that each of the organizations are using their finances wisely. So not only are they bettering their program, but they're also reaching out to more students, to, I guess, reiterate what I've been saying in the previous questions. And I believe that my experiences being a director of two different positions within the ASUW will help me in that. And I strongly believe that the work that I've done in those two programs and remaining in our financial constraints will help me into this transition. And I believe that I did a good job with those two programs, raising the awareness for each of them and bringing more students in. So that's something I can help directors with. Another goal that I have is, like I said, reaching out to more students, not just on the financial aspect, worrying about the finances, but making sure that they're going out to the different communities and working with my communications director and working with my community relations director to make sure that they're doing that appropriately. And I'm also going to be helping the president and making sure that the board is filling their job description, reaching out to the different committees, or reaching out to their different liaisons, and reaching out to the greater campus community. And that's going to be my goal as sort of the chief operating officer. That's what I'm going to start with and then build on top of that. So,
yeah, excellent. So let's see. So our fifth question here is more specific about the enterprises in particular. The vice president oversees the enterprises and assists in their goal setting and oversees their general performance. What aspects of performance will you be most closely examining, and how do you see yourself working with the directors to strengthen those entities?
Yeah, so I'm going to be working with Off-Campus Housing and Affairs, the University Bike Shop, or the ASUW Bike Shop, and Experimental College. And I had the opportunity to meet with Lindsay Gordon a couple weeks ago now, right when elections started, discussing where she's seeing EXCO going and what the role she sees the vice president as being. And what she mentioned to me was she's seen a lack of the liaisons really paying attention to what they want and what the different directors and assistant directors of the enterprises need. And my experience working within the ASUW and having that liaison relationship and knowing what I want from a liaison is going to help me with being able to take you're the current director of OCHA. So taking what you guys want and bringing that back to the board level and making sure that the whole board knows exactly where the enterprises need to go. I think that the real disservice this year was not as much discussion going back and forth between the enterprises and the board. And that's something that I want to change. And the whole ticket that I'm running on really wants to change as well. Obviously, helping with the new restructuring of OCHA. I learned about that through the personnel committee I sit on currently. And it's going to be a learning process, getting to know exactly where OCHA is going to be going. Helping the bike shop with the transition from the hub, because I know that this year they've done a great job of cutting hours, which is unfortunate because we want to give students all the possibility to get more experience working and to have the job. But we did see a need to cut, and they've done an excellent job of reducing the amount of money that they've had and continuing that on until we can see the transition to the hub and then really work with all the enterprises and to see where they're going to end up when we move back. So
absolutely. And our last question is kind of broad in how you would work, mainly with the finance and budget director, but with the budget as a whole. Briefly discuss how the budget process works within ASUW, and if elected, what your role would be in those discussions.
Yeah. So I've had to do this for a couple years, being the director of 2 different programs. You obviously have to submit the sheet, the budget sheet, 10% cuts, 5% cuts, and that's going to go to F&B. And then from F&B, they submit a proposal that goes to the board, and then the board passes that, and then it goes to the Student Activities Fund, and then they give you back the fund, and then the board looks over it again. So at several steps, the vice president's going to be working with that, both within working with the enterprises right when they get their first financial budget sheet, seeing where we can make cuts, seeing where we need to increase funds to reach more students with the programs, and then speaking with the finance and budget director, because this year the vice president, or this coming year, the vice president's going to be working closely with F&B to see where money needs to be allocated, and then sitting on the board, obviously. Advocating for my particular liaison and the enterprises, as well as different programs that I'll be working with throughout the year. And then once it comes back from staff and we actually see what money we have to work with, making sure that the board is effectively placing that money back. May it be that we didn't necessarily get as much money that we wanted, so where do we need to make more cuts? Did we get more money, which probably won't happen, but we can be hopeful, and allocating that money appropriately as well. So the vice president, throughout the whole process, has a lot that they're going to be putting their input on, and that's something that I'm looking forward to, and building the relationships with the F&B director and the rest of the board to make that successful. So
yeah, absolutely.